नमस्ते शारदे देवी काश्मीर पुरवासिनी त्वमाहं प्रार्थये नित्यं विद्यादानं च देहि मे।
This is Vidya Bhushundar from the Maple Land, Canada. Namaskar to all my brothers and sisters across the globe who are watching me and my panel of speakers to commemorate one more Martyrs Day in exile. I will admit one more gentleman here. I think we are all in quorum now. We Kashmiri Pandits observe 14th September as the Balidan Diwas. This was a day when our community idol, the tallest Hindu leader from Kashmir, Pandit Tikalal Chaplu, fell to the bullets of a religious bigot outside his home in Srinagar, very close to where I lived as a 21-year-old. The barbarism of Islamic extremists continued thereafter, and hundreds of the infinitesimal community limbs were severed in the most heinous way. A havoc was inflicted on this peaceful, educated, democratic, and minuscule population of Kashmiri Hindus. Their continued jihad eventually led to the forced exodus of the original aborigines of the valley, the Kashmiri Hindus. The day, 14th September, is the day of remembering the martyrs, known, unknown, sung, unsung, and anonymous. My young friends on the panel and all those who are listening to this conversation, that we should not have an iota of doubt that our community of Kashmiri Pandits would have been extinct, but we were saved by the martyrdom of many brave men and women, boys and girls. Our martyrs continue to inspire us even after 30 long years we have passed in exile in different parts of the world, in different parts of India. They inspired us to live a dignified life and continue our struggle to regain our lost native land, land of rishis, the Rishwar Kashmir. Pandit Tikalal Chaplu was not the only Pandit to be brutally murdered by the fanatic believed to be a local boy of the vicinity. In fact, he was the first popular leader of the community who was killed. The purpose was to create a terror amongst the minuscule Hindus. His killing followed the brutal murder of many noted Kashmiri Hindus. Judge Neelkant Ganju, R.P.N. Singh, Srimati Sheila Tikku, Pandit Premnath Bhatt, Satish Tikku, Pandit Sarvanand Kol Premi, B.K. Ganju, Sarla Bhatt, just to name a few martyrs among us. Friends, 1990 was a mayhem when a large number of community members were subject to lynching, hanging, drowning, slaying, rapes, torture, and executing them in the most heinous ways. The martyred Kashmiri Pandits belong to the elite society of academicians, lawyers, writers, thinkers, poets, scientists, social activists, and broadcasters. Post Exodus, there were three more major massacres, one in 1997, 1998, and 2003, in Sangrampura, in Vandhama, and Nandimarg, in which 23 and 24 Kashmiri Pandits in order were killed. 6 faced the carnage in Chitti Singhpura. 35 Sikhs were massacred on 20th March, the year 2000. Friends, I can go on and on speaking about the martyrdom of Kashmiri Hindus and Sikhs, but I am eager to introduce our speakers panel, and before that, the organizer of today's event, my brother, dear Arun Chapluji. Arun Chapluji is based in Canada. He was born in India, and he belongs to one of the most prominent and illustrious family of the valley. Arunji is well accomplished professional and entrepreneur with a rich corporate experience of over 3 decades. Prior to starting his own enterprise, Arun worked as a corporate vice president for a global conglomerate, Comcraft Group, and he had successful assignments in London, UK, in Mumbai, India, New Jersey, USA, and Toronto, Canada. Arun is currently involved in various businesses spread across the continents, which includes chemical, pharma, digital marketing, and consultation. He has known how to give it back to the society from his illustrious father, Pandit Saligam Chaplu, and perpetually motivated by his late uncle, Martyr Pandit Tikalal Chapluji, who was very well known for his furious practicing of law and bringing justice to the oppressed and the needy. Arunji is the founder of Arun Kumar Taplu Foundation, a leading charity organization active in India and in Canada, and works for the following initiatives: relieving poverty, advancing education, promote and advance art and culture, partner with various charities and organizations, and promote the values of life. I'd also like to introduce my panel of speakers, young men and women who were born a few years before or after our forced exodus from the valley. These 11 new gems, they represent the 11 families left in Kashmir during the peak of Islamic terror in the 14th century during the reign of Sultan Sikandar, notoriously known as Iconoclast or Sikandar Butt Chicken. I would like to now request these young women and men to give a brief intro of themselves. I'll start with Vaibhav Paul. Vaibhav, can you please introduce yourself? Unmute yourself first.
Namaskar, Sadni. Which was Vaibhav Paul. My father is from Bagat, Barzula, and my mother was from Ranavari. My parents and younger sisters are currently based in Jaipur. I am an aerospace and avionics engineer by profession. I worked as an avionics systems engineer in Hyderabad for 5 years before moving to Canada in July this year.
Wonderful. Now I move to Seema Pandita. Seema, can you introduce yourself? Seema, do you hear me?
Yes, hi, good morning everyone. My name is Seema Rajput. I'm a retired major from Indian Army. I served almost 10 years and my last posting was Srinagar Badami Bagh cantonment. I stayed almost 3 years over there. So after completion of my tenure in 2015, I moved here in Canada in 2016. And now I'm working as a medical administrator here and my profession is nursing officer being in Army. So
Welcome. Thank you. Amit Ban, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the panel and the world over?
Good morning, everyone, and good evening. My name is Amit Ban. I work as an IT consultant in Toronto for Manlife Financial for last 6 years, and I come from Ganderbal, Kashmir, Laduna, near the foothills of Mata Kirwani.
Thank you. Namaskar. Arvind ji, can you please introduce yourself? Unmute yourself first. Arvind Razdan.
Namaskar, Sarni. My name is Arvind Razdan. I was born in Srinagar. My family migrated, like most of us, on January 19th, 1990. I've done my master's in engineering from India and have been in Canada from past 6 years working in an IT consulting company.
Thank you, Arvind. Next on the panel is Himalay Sumili. Himalay, can you introduce yourself?
Namaskar, मेरा नाम हिमालय, which was basically as a family, my own introduction चाहिए कि we have faced 2 exoduses. Basically, I hail from Sumbal, small village in Baramulla district, wherein my grandfather got displaced because of religious persecution in 1947, and we moved to Srinagar, and after Srinagar to Jammu in 1990, and I am a IT guy and an entrepreneur, and from last 2 years I'm here in Canada, and I have been like for last 30 years a hardcore Panun Kashmir activist, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Himalay. Next on the panel is Pankaj Rana. Pankaj, can you unmute yourself?
Namaskar, Mara Sadni. मैं नाम पंकज रैना. I hail from Ranawari, Kashmir, Bagh Jogi Lankar Sathwanan. I was born in Kashmir in 1984, just around the Sikh riots and all those things happening in India at that time. And in 1990, my family migrated from Kashmir to Delhi. We left Kashmir very late in April when everybody was kind of leaving in January. My father was still a believer that things will change around after January, which did not. So unfortunately, we moved to Delhi, and I've been in Canada now for like last 6 years. I'm an engineer by profession. I've done my master's also in Canada and have been living in Canada for the last 6 years.
Thank you, Pankaj ji. Next on the panel is Neha Misri. Neha, namaskar. Can you please introduce you to the panel, please?
Namaskar everyone. I'm Neha Misri. My dad is actually was born in Zondar Mohalla in Kanyakadar in Srinagar, and they all moved from Srinagar to Jammu in '89 actually. Well, from '87, they kept going to Jammu during the winters, and then in '89, that's where they permanently moved. For me personally, my dad is Kashmiri. I'm actually brought up in Mauritius, and I have I'm in accounting and finance background, and I moved to Canada 9 years back.
Thank you, Neha. Next on the panel is Puneet Pandita. Puneet ji, namaskar. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Namaskar, everyone. I'm Puneet Pandita. I actually hail from a village near a famous picnic spot, Kokarnag, Anantnag. I'm an engineer by education, and I'm a business professional working in Toronto for last 6 months.
Thank you, Puneet.
And prior to
Go ahead.
being in Toronto, I was in Pune for last 10 years.
Thank you. Next on the panel is Arjun Veer Kolchak. Arjun, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, Namaskar. I'm Arjun Veer Kolchak. I've actually recently immigrated to Canada, and I'm actually a law graduate. And my family is currently in Lucknow. And I was actually born in 1991, so I'm
around the same time.
I'm aware of the stories, but I was not subject to most of the atrocities that took place.
But that's another story, Arjun, which you will tell us later, because
Definitely.
forefathers immigrated because of
Yes,
Islamic persecution many centuries ago.
Many centuries back.
Next on the panel is Deepit Ganju. Deepit, please unmute yourself.
Namaskar, everyone. My name is Deepak Ganju, and I am an IT professional working here in Toronto. Moved here in 2019. I was born in Srinagar, 1988, 2 years before the exodus happened. My dad is from Gokjabag, Srinagar. My mom is from Jogilankar, Ranawari. And my memories, I don't have any much memories because I was only a 2-year-old baby when the whole migration happened. But all the stories that I've heard from my parents still pain me, and Kashmir is a subject that is very close to my heart. And it still pains me that I can only go to Kashmir as a tourist to my own homeland. So, that's my short, brief introduction.
Thank you, Deepit. Definitely, we will all looking forward to that day when we'll go back on our own terms. Thank you. So that completes one of the other young men. He's not able to connect somehow. Shivan's Dar. I hope he will be joining us soon. Now, we are basically remembering our martyrs today. So I'll request Arunji to take over and give us an insight about his own experience as he grew up in the Chappu household with Lalaji. When Pandit Tikalal Chappuji was lovingly known as Lalaji among the community, Kashmiris, Hindus across. And he was very magnanimous. He used to help a lot of people around. And I remember that day when everybody was wailing, when he passed. His uncle, a great influencer in his life for Arunji, he was the eldest child in the Chappu family. Arunji, I'll request you to light a diya in the fondest memory of Lalaji. Arunji, can you unmute yourself?
Namaskar to everybody. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Vidaji, and my very hearty welcome to all of you who are participating in this and all the viewers who are watching this program. To begin with, may I request everyone to mark a 30-second silence in the memory of all the Kashmiri Pandits who lost their lives, making this day our Balidan Diwas for all of us. Now I'm going to light a diya just in the making this moment our moment of silence. So we can begin now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Vidaji, again, for pretty much putting together everything around this event. And my talking about Lala is almost a complete book in itself. What can I say about my uncle? To sum it up, what I'm going to do really is to give you a full perspective of my sort of experiences with him as I was growing up in my household, so that you have a proper idea of what a towering personality he was. I like to start by reading some of the selected quotes and the expressions made in public for my Lalaji. As I quote, lost a friend, a guide, and a zealous party worker by late Honorable Prime Minister of India, Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Iron Man of Kashmir, L.K. Advaniji. Tikalal, a secular and a Karm Yogi stalwart who fought dauntless for the cherished ideas and the national integration, again by Advaniji. Tikalal Teplu, the Hindu line of Kashmir, the Martyrs. Tikalal Peril and the Crown of India, Sri K.L. Sharma, National VP, BJP. That so many of them, as you know, and I've selected only a few. 31 years have passed, and the rich memories of Lara surround me, as if he is still standing next to me and guiding me in many ways. I lived in a large household, and our family name is grand. I would imagine now that when it is being traced back to Saint Krishnji Teplu, who discovered Tulumul, Kheer Bhavani, most revered place of worship for Kashmiri Pandits. It's very well documented in our famous book by Kalhans, Raj Tarangani. Looking back in time, I can proudly say that all my elders, starting with my adorable father to my uncle and aunties, all were somehow motivated to do better, not only to accomplish higher professional spaces, but also to become socially aware individuals. At our home, everyone contributed a fair share socially, without any discrimination. Our house was always welcoming, and I know of no such day when people did not drop by and pay a visit to us, right from our immediate neighbors to friends and social workers. Lalaji was always engaging in debates and enjoyed meeting people. In fact, as I remember, Chinkran Mola was always a buzz. My memories are afresh as I relate this and recall of many events of the towering personality Uncle Lalaji indeed was. He was my true guide and a mentoring company. Lalaji had special love for me and wanted that I do well and always make him and the family proud. He took interest in matters of my studies and had no hesitation in speaking to my school headmaster and to my teachers. In fact, he will drop me to SP College as well. And the instances began when it became almost a routine, and I observed when walking through the couple lanes from our home to Habagadal Chowk, where he would be surrounded many auto rickshawalas, they would often times fight their way to have the pleasure of giving a ride to Lalaji to the court. He will make sure that they get paid, even though some of them did not want to be taking any money from him. Kya hamara shubh karan, Lala? Mand chavan chu mara? Quickly through the ride, he would pick up a conversation or two and ask the auto rickshawala about his welfare. I get dropped at Lal Chowk and he would move to the court. I would walk to SV College, and sometimes he would drop me to the college first and then go to the courts. Oftentimes after my college, I would come back to the court and return back home with him. Our journey back to the home was one on the foot, and what a walk, at least 4 stops, conversations, exchanges of love and welfare, but indeed very common. On way back, he and I would sometimes call on my maternal home, which was at Ganpatiyar. He adored my Mamaji and always wanted to ask him about the welfare of that particular area, Ganpatiyar as such, because he wanted to have the full knowledge of what's happening within the community, and he was his touch point. I'm witness to the adorations and the respect hugs of the common man on the street. Lala was a magnet, pure affection. I personally saw many a times that officials would rise from their chairs and greet Lala at the court, including the senior judges. They were in awe of his personality, one that of a great leader and a social activist. At courts, he was there to help come what may, be it a lady or a man who could not afford court fees, enjoyed challenging cases of separation, the disputes, and paid expenses from his pocket. I think he never rejected cases at all because he loved to help. In the evenings, he would come back home and tell all of us as to how he wanted to settle the cases for a simple common person. He would make me sit with him in the courtyards, but he enjoyed having tea and snacks, and many a times it was me and my friends from the college as well. He would never hesitate. Lalaji was particular about his routines, and one that of his exercises, which was a treat to watch. His headstand pose with no mat in the open garden was something that we all watched. His shaka routine was pretty regular, and I was accompanied to company of his, invariably to Sheetalnath. He was a great taskmaster and commanded respect. He was disciplined and wanted young ones to be so and lead a life of pride. Lalaji engaged in, pretty much the regular chores as anyone would do, like gardening. He would play cricket with us. He was like an easygoing person. Many a times, my dad would tell him, Lalaji, not to facilitate any passes for me or my friends to go to the movies, as this was becoming routine and studies was important. I remember the trips with him to our orchards and that of out of town. In fact, I had made a bond with him and seek advice and guidance unhesitatingly. Lalaji was very close to my dad, and he would confide and seek advice from him. Broaden shoulders and put chest out and walk with pride. He will say that to me and to any young guy. Lalaji's walk was indeed majestic, and his attire was sharp. He made sure that I stayed away from troublemakers, and some of whom he knew were the elements of Azadi movement. They get money across from the border, he would say to me very quietly in my ear. At our house, it was always a VIP event when we were told by Lalaji that our elders that Sri Advaniji is coming home, or late Honorable Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, or be it late Kedarnath Sahni ji would come to home. Such towering personalities, and I always looked up to those events. He would set up the preparations and assign his task of the events as to what to do. Lalaji was very close to Atalji and Advaniji. They enjoyed the feast of Kashmiri Sal at home, and I had the pleasure of serving dishes in their thalis. These events indeed were of significance. All of these towering personalities restored the faith in Lala and his style of working, and besides politics, they made very good friends and comrades. They looked up to Lala, and he will say, "Bahut kaam karna hai." A lot of work has to be done. Lalaji's rise in politics was natural, and his rise to the high office of Vice President Bharatiya Janata Party was no surprise to me. And even though he had lost 2 elections by a small margin, his presence was always felt in all social settings. He was fearless, honest, and stood tall, and he indeed meant well for everyone. He always displayed a true nationalistic and secular character of which he was quite proud. He meant harmony, and his messages were that of a true Indian soldier. I remember many a times how he confronted people who displayed views which were partisan and undemocratic. His role during emergency is very well documented. I do remember about the meetings held to plan and resist during the emergency. And he would oftentimes change his attire from one dress to another. And I clearly remember the one where I was present, where he was given a farran and tarang to wear in my Matamal. Those were dreaded times, and he played the leadership role in this agitation, and courting arrest was normal for him. Courting arrest in many instances in his lifetime was brutally unjust, and staying in jail for months with his fellow colleagues was indeed courageous. He took stones on his chest while during famous speech at Lal Chowk, where Sri Vajpayee ji was present, and along with other dignitaries. He will resist any bad action like an Iron Man will do. Come on, kill me, he will say. There was so much of desire he had for our community to do well, both socially and economically. And I very, very clearly remember all his speeches. And one of which inspired me the most, which was at Habakadal, where he said to all Pandits to wake up, and that waking up late will be too late. And he welled up. Tears rolled down his eyes. And I was simply wondering, while looking at him, as to why he should be so emotional. After all, he is such a tall leader. Why should he show his weak side? Now I know it was his deep emotional self, and he was trying to convince all Pandits to be together and making them understand that marching together was a sign of strength. Do not let yourself be divided, he would say so many times, and he knew some were being influenced negatively. He used to tell me, why some Pandits get bought so easily? Yaman kya karo? Yaman kitpat hachna? Hikri shumnatara. Lalaji lost the elections by a small margin of 600 votes or so. On my long walk from Shali store became deeply conversational with Karyakartas. He was not only torn apart, but he did show his frustrations with so many of us at home. Kya kar sakte hain? I'm doing my best, so be it. And indeed, we were all sad. I was able to watch him in his lonely self sometimes. And of course, he will not show it openly to anyone. So I asked him, what's up, Lalaji? He will say, working on my next plans. But I knew that it was the loss of election. He was so clear in his vision. And he would say how Pandits should be in business. While walking with him, sometimes he would sit with friends who owned shops, like a liquor shop or a famous ones owned by Kak Sahibs, pharmacies owned by Dilip Walis and others. I would sit besides with him and listen him talk to them. Lala was there always correcting the mindset of people, and that's what I saw very clearly of him. He was very good at that and very logical. Why should we not open up more businesses? He knew this. This was another way to create a power group and lobby the cause. He was against anyone making mockeries of anyone's profession. I remember 2 young people who had opened up an auto repair shop at Karanagar, and he was quite proud. He would come and visit with them. In fact, I would take my uncle's Lamreta scooter to be repaired by them, and I was myself indeed very proud of them. I never looked down upon their profession. During the later part of 90s, there were a lot of rumors about freedom. And the rumors were becoming increasingly loud, and Lalaji did understand that there was something not right. But he condemned anyone and everyone who would resist the voice for freedom. He used to give short speeches expressing himself fearlessly and, more importantly, convincingly. There was something different in 1989 between February to September. Lala was away to Delhi for a legal case and he came back to Kashmir, leaving behind his family in Delhi. He was at home and all seemed well until on the fateful day of 14th of September. He was jovial and at his best spirits. Lalaji's morning was pretty normal and had his usual puja of Ma Durga. Put up a nice tikka as usual. He had his light meals, conversations with my sister, was very happy as usual. Had a conversation with my dad as well. He actually asked my mom, as he would just pretty much normally will ask, Pyari, kya ijazat? Do I have your permission? Lalaji left home after all these goodbyes, sometimes around 10:30 with his assistant, and I believe his, I don't have his full name, I think his first name was probably Bilal Ahmed, carrying his bag. A few lanes away from the house, say about 100 to 120 steps, he was shot dead multiple times behind his back, absolutely cowardly. He had the courage during that time while he was being shot to get up and turn back and confront the killers who simply ran away. This was watched by the bakery shop and others who came to our home, letting us know about this dastardly act. I just landed from Mumbai, from London, UK on 12th midnight, where I was based, and had plans to come to the valley anyway. And when this news broke, it just tore me apart. I just got my tickets done through a friend of mine on board. Surprisingly, I had a company of Mr. Alak Padamsi, Sharon Prabhakar, and exchanged concerns about the valley. They were in grief with me by the time we reached Delhi. And the same flight was boarded by Sri L.K. Advaniji, Sri Kedarnath Saniji, and my auntie, Sarla Mami, and by my brothers from Delhi to move to Srinagar. What an arrival at Srinagar airport. A lot of commotion. We were whisked away to our home from the airport. Everyone was mourning. I was simply shocked to see my dearest Lalaji's body laying at home, almost tearing my soul. I kissed his feet and his forehead and cried. I stood up shocked. And soon I started to ask around why this heinous act. I saw Farooq Abdullah and Parallel Hindu drop by, along with other officials at home. Not too many people liked their presence. Mr. Vijay Kumar Tikkuji, humorously and lovingly known as Actually, he is late Vijay Kumar now. He was absolutely furious with anger and loud. When I saw this built-up of the anger, my uncles and some seniors told Abdullahs and Hindus to leave the house quietly so that nothing untowardly happens because of their presence. My journey of taking away my Lalaji to Sheetalnath was eventful. To see how over 5,000 and more people joined us. Alongside the Pandits, there were Muslims, women, kids, young and old, and everyone wanting to pay their respect. On the way, I saw miscreants wanting to disturb the yatra. Muslim woman crying loud in disbelief, who actually started tearing away their ferens and beating their chests and asking the bad omens to kill them. Overbearing as to why Lala was the one. The valley was grief-stricken, and after seeing their beloved Lala taken away from them. This was indeed my saddest day. That and now, after passing away of over 3 decades, my family, the entire family, has taken the martyrdom in stride, and we are indeed quite proud of Lalaji's sacrifice. Lalaji was supported by his wife and my dear auntie, who I call Sarla Mamiji. Throughout his journey, she stood by him enduringly and remained proud of him and continues to remain proud of him and his accomplishments. Just like every one of us, all my dear uncles and aunties in the family, as well along with his children who bear the loss with all of us, Ashtoji, Anilji, and Kavitaji. I somehow believe that Lalaji was carved out for this role of uniting the community, upholding nationalism. My uncle will remain with me in spirits as always he is. Like my father, he shaped me up and showed me ways to stand up tall and do the good work, and one which continues the legacy of being socially impactful. I salute you, Lalaji. You were, you are, and you will be my true hero. Thank you all for hearing me out with all the patience. My deepest respects to all the brothers and sisters who have given up their lives in this Holocaust of ours. Thank you very much. Thank you, Vidyaji, and namaskar.
Thank you, Aranjeet, for walking us all with the memory lane. And I want to share with you all, with our young speakers, that I was a member of Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangathan, also known as RSS, from my middle school days. And I attended the Diwan Mandir Shakha in Banamala, Srinagar. I've attended many camps called Shivers in Tulamula, where I have interacted with Lalaji as a pracharak. And as I'm talking to you, I somehow feel choked, and I can hear his thunderous voice and see him standing tall while training and guiding the young Swayamsevaks. I used to live in the same neighborhood as well. Folks, enough has been said, talked, debated, and protested about how we Kashmiri Pandits became refugees in our own land. Though this was not our first post exodus at the hands of Islamic radicals, we experienced many before this. And at the peak of Islamic terror in Kashmir, we were reduced to just 11 families who were also living in exile and anonymity, lest they will be killed by the proselytizing sword of Islam. But what happened in 1990 was the most brutal one, for the fact that we were the citizens of the largest so-called functional democracy in the world. We had our army, we had the support of the 100 crore Hindus with us, but still we became refugees in our own land. The world remained silent over our genocide, and we, after 30 years in exile, are still yearning to go back. It's time to pass the baton to our next generation. As someone well said that, we can't let the next generation grow up without heroes. Some of us have to fight out. And that fight was led by leaders like Tikalaji and thousands of brave men, women, boys, and girls who lost their lives in the mayhem. Today, our panel has young Kashmiris, as young as 22-year-old, and some of them were born in Kashmir just before their family had to leave Kashmir. And I want to speak today what they think about the land of their ancestors, how they perceive the yearning of their parents and their grandparents to return back to their roots. When they celebrate our days like Shivratri and Pan and Satyadev and many other things, what do they think? I mean, none of them has probably gone back to Kashmir because of the mayhem all these years. So I'll start in alphabetic order, and I hope Shivan hasn't been able to join yet. So I will start the panel discussion with our young people. One full generation has passed away. My grandparents have passed away. We are the next generation who are, going towards that end, and we hope that in my lifetime we will be able to go back to our Kashmir. And now I will start with Amit Ban. Amit, can you please unmute yourself and switch on your?
Vidyaji, sorry to interrupt. This is Arvind here. Shivans has joined. So,
Shivansh has joined. So
yeah,
Shivansh,
yeah.
can you please introduce yourself, unmute yourself and put on your video.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is Shivansh Dar. I'm the son of on the West Coast. I'm 22. I suppose I'm the youngest panelist here. I'm still a student studying at the University of. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm the son of the panelist, Vidyadhar. I'm still a student studying at the University of Waterloo, currently doing computer science. I've done a few internships at companies like Google, Facebook, and Snapchat. And so I just had introduction, right?
Perfect. Thank you, Shivansh. Appreciate it. So I will ask Amit Ban to take the dice. So if they take the mic and tell us what does he think about being a Kashmiri, and what does he think about all this mayhem we are basically fighting since last 30 years and getting to go back. Amit Ban, can you please unmute yourself and switch on your your camera?
Yes, namaskar everyone. As I briefed you in my introduction, I come from Tulmula, a village 1 kilometer, just 10 minutes walk away from Mata Kirwani. So I was fortunate enough, or rather my family, we were fortunate enough to stay in Kashmir until 98. And then we had to take a decision to move from Kashmir, to leave our land, to leave our home. It happened just after the massacre of Vandhama. It's a village just 15 minutes distance from our village. So we saw that massacre, what happened to those families. 25 of those kids, elders, and everybody were killed there. So that was a time when we decided, or my father decided that it's not safe anymore and we have to move from Kashmir. So as I said, I was there till my class 10th. So I have very fond memories of that place, and I miss it. I miss it every day. It's hard to forget my childhood because I spent most of my childhood there. So I wish and I hope one day we'll go back. I'll go back to my village, go back to my place, and that's what always in my mind. And I'm hoping that all of us one day will go back to our motherland. Yeah, that's pretty much I can share my experience of my family.
Amit, do you have any fond memories of Kashmir? How old were you when you left Kashmir?
I was 15 years old when we left Kashmir, Vidyaji.
Grade 9.
So yeah, as I said, it's hard to forget because I spent most of my childhood there. So it's been almost 21 years now. I think the last time I visited there was in 2001, almost 19 years. I haven't gone back. So yeah, I'm waiting for a day, I go back and see my home, touch my land.
Thank you, Amit. Thank you so much. Next on the panel is Arjun Veer Kolchak. I want to tell all the panelists here that Arjun Veer comes from the progeny of the family, the Kol family, who had to leave Kashmir around maybe 300 or 400 years back. And that was because, the continued, ours is not a genocide of just 1990. Ours is the only continued genocide in the world. 1990 was the seventh exodus at the hands of the same ideology, at the hands of the same modus operandi. We were given only three options: relieve, you or get in. And probably exactly Arjun's family had to endure the same kind of a scenario maybe 300 years back. So Arjun, unmute yourself and share your thoughts. What do you think about Kashmir? And how do you see us going back?
From what actually in my case, fortunately, I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me? Reason I'm not being able to hear anything.
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, hi. So fortunately, I was not subject to any of these atrocities, nor also my family. But from it's just that people in the plains knew about these atrocities. They would actually talk about them. They would actually relate to it. And the fact that they obviously could not differentiate between the constant the series of exodus and the atrocities that took place with Kashmiris, but uh, and that was another thing that I myself do not know. As I was told that there was an exodus in which the Muslims were even asked to leave Kashmir. So the title that we use, Chak, it's I think it comes from the ruler Ghazi Khan Chak, the kingsman in his court, and so I'm not even sure if we were Hindu or we were practicing Islam. But of course, now that we've settled in the plains and we are thing, and this has always been there. The fact that there is lack of political will to amend the situation, although recently they have they did strike down Article 370, but they haven't really come up to their promises. They have just done something which is a mere formality. And I have never been able to visit, thinking that I always wish that we could always visit our homeland. Like I can see that in my mother's eyes. She always wanted that to happen. Like even my father, he's like, we wish we could visit our homeland once. My nana was in the army, and he was posted there at one point of time. And he did tell me tales. He is sadly no more. May his soul rest in peace. He did mention about instances of residing in Kashmir and how pretty it was. And yeah, I would definitely want to visit our homeland, our original homeland. Thanks a lot.
For the brief, yearning and your love for Kashmir. So I just want to answer your question because the Chak, which is basically it comes from a Muslim rural family. As a matter of fact, I'm a student of history myself. So what has happened in Kashmir? I mean, after the 13th century, when the first Muslim settlement came in Kashmir, there are many Hindus, who still carry the Muslim names due to the reason that they were working for some. So there are sultans, there are misris, probably somebody who was working in Egypt called Misr, and then there are Salmans and Khans. So this was basically not because they were like Muslims or reconverted Muslims. These were those Hindus who were identified because they worked for some Muslim ruler or something like that. So that's one part of it. The second part, what you said basically was that the Muslim had to. I don't recall any of those incidents in the history of Kashmir that Muslims were basically asked to leave. So as I said in the beginning of the discussion, that there was a time at the peak of Islamic insurgency during Sultan Sikandar's rule in Kashmir.
Yes.
Kashmiri Hindus were reduced to 11 families. And then after that, there were times when Kashmiri Hindus came back to the valley. And today's 500,000 diaspora of Kashmiri Hindus all around the globe are basically the progeny of those 11 families. That's the reason why whenever you see any Kashmiri anywhere, you will find a connection, relation. We are a very small community. So thank you, Arjun, for that piece of history, related to your family, and I hope our next generation, goes back to Kashmir soon and not basically, talk about, how it happened to our, forefathers. Next on the panel is Arvind Razdan. And Arvind happens to be the son of my teacher in national school, and I have a very special bond with him. Arvind, the dice is all yours. Go ahead.
Namaskar, everyone. Arunji, namaskar. Vijayaji, namaskar. I was 4 years old, somewhere around 4 or 5, and my family had to run from their family home. But even being 4 years old, I do remember looking out of the window. I was at that time living at this Natipora house of mine, looking out of the window on the street, and I could see these the militants on the trucks with their guns raising. It was same like we see in Afghanistan, like the Taliban and all. So I was just 4 years old, but that picture is still in my mind, that how it was. And the next picture is my maternal uncle coming to our Srinagar home, and they were writing H on every single item that we took with us. Those items were shipped to Jammu on 18th January in a truck, and we moved on the early morning hours of 19th January 1990. And I remember I was sitting on the lap of my uncle on the front seat of an ambassador car, having uncle chips. I was just 4 or 5 years old. And at that time, when my family moved out from there, it was with minimal items that we are coming back in a week or two. But those 2 weeks turned out to be, I would say, almost 2 generations now. So with me, it was not, there was no direct, I could see, relate to myself. But yes, I could see in my parents that at the peak of their life, when they had to enjoy in their 30s, they had to give up everything that they have, whether socially or economically. Whatever they have put together for themselves, whatever their plans were, they had to move out and live in Jammu, to a rented place or with some relative, without knowing anything what is going to happen. My father, he was not a government employee, he was working in private, as Vidyaji told, he was in national school. So he had no source of income. Even then, what makes me proud to be a Kashmiri is having minimal things to survive at that time. We Kashmiris studied. We Kashmiris never lost our hope. We as Brahmins of Kashmir, we became engineers, we became doctors, and very, 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 it is like the karma or a cycle that the Kashmiri Pandits are like, they will never ever bow down, even though we are outside in Canada, in US and everywhere. In our heart, we have Kashmir. I'm not sure, will I go to Kashmir back to live? I don't know. But yes, when I go, I don't want to go as a tourist. I want to go as I'm at my home. And being in India, almost at most of the parts of India, from Kerala to Chennai to Bangalore to say Ahmedabad, Rajasthan, whenever I would introduce myself that I am Arvind Razdan from Kashmir, I'm a Kashmiri Pandit, I could see the respect in that other person. Oh, you're a Kashmiri Pandit. So that is what Kashmir is. It is not, Kashmir is not only the 97% Muslims living there. It is us. It is people on which atrocities were made and who did not convert to Islam. People who stood to their religion, to their ethos. And now, even now, they have not taken guns or not violent, have studied, and one day, with the support of people like Vidyaji, Arunji, and many other people. With their support, like Jews got their Israel back, we Kashmiris will for sure have our Kashmir back, no matter if we go there or not, but we want our home there. Thank you, Vidyaji.
Ranjit, thank you for such an emotional outburst. And we need young people like you who has that flame and the fire in you, which will basically keep our dream of going back to Kashmir. You see, I mean, there's a lot of backdrop about it. I mean, we talked about Kashmir. There is no Marathiyat or Haryaniyat or Delhiyat. I mean, pseudo-seculars have coined this word Kashmir, and we know what happened in Kashmir, not just in 1990, but many, many years before that. Now I take the panel discussion forward, and the next speaker is Deepit Ganju. Deepit, can you please unmute yourself?
Thank you, Vidyaji. And namaskar, everyone. Like I said, Kashmir has always been very, very close to my heart. I want to speak a little bit about my family's experiences during the Exodus and how it was for them, and what all stories that I heard from my family. I was only a 2-year-old kid when the Exodus happened. So all the stories and everything has been basically from my grandparents and my parents who experienced that Exodus hands-on, firsthand. And my Nanaji and my Nani had recently built their new home in Renawari. It was just 1 year old before. It was just 1 year before they had finally moved into their new homes, made with so much love and so much hard work. And my Nanaji was on the hit list of people whose names were mentioned. On mosques outside our house, that he was amongst the people who was on the hit list. He was an AG's officer, a government. He was working with the government, and one fine day, people would come to our house and come to my matamal and tell my grandparents, my Nanaji, that you're on the hit list and you should leave immediately. You don't have much time. And my Nani went into a state of shock. She probably she had no words, and there was a sense of fear in her eyes, because my Nanaji did not want to leave, and even my mama and my mother, they were all they knew that this was not a joke, and there was a serious risk to his lives. And there were people who came that night to our matamal, and all of them telling us that giving us those threats that you better leave in a couple of days, or you never know what might happen. And that night, I guess, or it was the next night, when my grandparents, my Nana and Nani, decided that they would leave their house, their land, and the brand new home that they built, and all their precious memories. And along with that night, they took a truck, and my Nanaji, you won't believe that he was transported in a truck with lying in between carpets. He had to hide in between carpets, and my Nani would sit on top of that carpet. And that truck left that night from Srinagar to Jammu. And my Nanaji, throughout the journey, that long 12-14 hour journey, was hidden behind underneath a carpet. And my Nani, she cried throughout that journey, and she was worried, scared to death, that someone might stop their truck that night and kill my Nanaji. And along with that, but somehow that painful memory is the first thing that comes to mind when I speak about our Exodus, because people who have experienced it firsthand, they know how painful and how they've suffered. I also would like to pay tribute to Pandit Trikalal Tapluji, because I know there are many people who have been who have really who have given their lives for our cause, and we should be at least grateful, if not anything, for what they've done for our community. The Kashmiri Pandit community is a very resilient community, and we even though when we lost everything back in 1990, our land, our home, our jobs, we came back, and we survived that, I'm sure we will always survive no matter what happens. But my one hope is that, we get our homeland back. I know we're settled all over the world. We are doing well in our respective jobs and everything. But, given a chance, if I was asked that, would you go back to your home? I would love to. I would love to go back to Kashmir. And there is a sense of belonging that I have with Kashmir. I've been there at least 5 to 6 times after the Exodus. Unfortunately, only as a tourist, and but every single time the emotions that I encounter, or that I feel whenever I visit my homeland are something else, and no other place in this world can give you that emotion and make you feel at home. And my mom and my dad, they keep telling me stories about their childhood in Kashmir, and they had a wonderful, beautiful childhood. And my parents are both doctors. And then since the Exodus in 1990, they haven't got the courage to visit Kashmir or go back to their homeland, and they just say that no, we cannot. It's too painful for us to go back to their own go back to their own city where they were born. And I would love to take them someday. It's my hope that someday I will take my parents back to Kashmir and make them visit all the places that they had fond memories at, their childhood home, our place in Gobjabag, and our home which I visited in 2017, and it has completely changed. There is no, like I said, everything has changed back now. But still, I would love to take my parents back and this time hopefully for good. And my grandpage, my Nanaji, I would love to take him to his home that he had built, where he got to stay only for 1 year. And unfortunately, my Dada, my Dadi, and my Naniji are no longer alive, and it's unfortunate that they will not be able to visit their homeland. But I hope that someday it is possible that we can all go back and make Kashmir our home, our own home again. And just hope that things improve. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate your thoughts and your connect with Kashmir. So the next on the panel is Himalay Sumli. Himalay, can you unmute yourself? Himalay is the son of one of our great leaders, Dr. Agni Shetterji, who has been relentlessly, fighting for our cause of Pannu Kashmir. So Himalay, the dice is all yours. Please share your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Vidyaji, for such a humbling introduction. And first thing first, at the outset, I think I should begin with thanking Indo-Canadian Kashmir Forum, Shri Arun Tapluji, KOAC, KP Australia, Panun Kashmir, and Youth for Panun Kashmir for making this event possible, and everybody is listening to us right now. So, I mean, this event in itself is, as we say in English, like one of its kind. And why I said like it's one of its kind, because I got a call from Vidyaji, Vidya Bhushandarji. Me basan do bronta aw me phone yun dopok he told me ki Himalay ashe kya karon matlab ye US and Canada's mas Martyrs test to when do panda do. And I was like myself on it, and then we both made a group, WhatsApp group. We coordinated with all the activists, all the Kashmiri Pandit youngsters, and जिनको आप अभी तक सुन रहे थे. And then Vidyaji gave a very beautiful idea that we will have 11 Kashmiri Pandit participants, youth participants, and that would represent basically, and as you know, like in one point in time in history of Kashmir, during the reign of Afghan rule, and during the reign of the iconoclast from Kashmir, Sikandar Butt-Shikand, only 11 families were left in Kashmir. Imagine, अगर हम कहते हैं कि आज हम 10 लाख कश्मीरी पंडित हैं या 10 लाख से ज्यादा हैं, तो एक समय वो भी था, मेरे ख्याल ज्यादा टाइम पहले नहीं, शायद 200 या 300 साल पहले, कश्मीर में सिर्फ 11 कश्मीरी पंडित घर थे, और उसी पर एक कहावत भी है कश्मीरी में कि तेल मार रहा है कहन गाँव। तो उन 11 फैमिलीज से अगर हम आज 10 लाख है, तो हम 10 लाख से 2 करोड़ भी हो जाएंगे, 2 करोड़ से 10 करोड़ भी हो जाएंगे, और फिर हम पनुन कश्मीर जाएंगे, जो कि हमारा फाइनल डेस्टिनेशन है। तो अपनी बात को आगे बढ़ाते हुए 14 सितंबर अमर सेनानी शहीद टिकलाल टपलू जी के याद में हम लोग इसको कमेमोरेट करते हैं। He was a great BJP leader, great lawyer. I mean, one of the tallest figures from Kashmir we have, as far as the Kashmiri Pandit community is concerned. उनका जो martyrdom था, it was like supreme for us. But at the same time, we should know, I mean, you all here are like, most of us are, I mean, apart from Arunji himself and Vidyaji himself, we are all youngsters here. So we should know, like, there have been so many unidentified killings in Kashmir, massacres in Kashmir. And that is even before when Tiklal Taplu ji की शहादत हुई कश्मीर में, उससे पहले कुछ प्रोमिनेंट नेम तो हम जानते ही हैं, जैसे जस्टिस नीलकंठ गंजू जी थे, सतीश तिक्कू जी थे, गिरजा रैना जी थी, सरला भट्ट थे, सर्वानंद प्रेमी जी थे, और मुझे वो डिटेल्स में जाने की जरूरत नहीं, आप सब लोग जानते हैं कि व्हाट हैपेंड विद देम, हाउ दे वर लाइक ब्रूटली किल्ड एंड इन कोल्ड मर्डर. But I thought like I should today reveal some names for you. I mean, in case you guys don't know, like most of us are here like young participants. So, and if you guys want to make a note of this, you should please go ahead with that, because I'm going to reveal some names that I have like researched from last 5 to 6 months, and they are like they're like kind of unsung, kind of very unknown, and they died the martyrdom in isolation. तो एक priest थे from विचार नाग टेम्पल, जो लोग कश्मीर में, जो यंगस्टर्स कश्मीर में हमारे एक्सोडस से पहले पैदा हुए, उनको पता होगा विचार नाग मंदिर था सोवरा मेडिकल के पास. तो वहां पर एक priest थे, उनका नाम था केशवनाथ पंडित. He was basically killed, assassinated by his own security guard. I don't know how many of you know this thing. And what was the problem? Basically, क्योंकि ये priest था, तो every morning he would wake up and he will do all the prayers, and तो जो घंटी की साउंड थी और जो शंख का वादन था, उससे उसका जो ये कश्मीरी मुसलमान इसका जो सिक्योरिटी गार्ड था, उससे उसे तकलीफ हुई. And one fine day he just fired some bullets in his chest. So this is like one of the killings, right? And then they say there is Kashmiriyat. And दूसरा एक सन्यासी जी थे, सन्यासी जी का नाम मुझे, I'm still working on getting his name, but he was again killed in cold blood in Manzgam area of Kashmir. One Prabhavati ji of Badgam, on his way to Hari Singh High Street, a grenade was thrown on her, and like on way to the hospital she succumbed. And एक बहुत बड़ा एक इंफॉर्मेशन यहाँ पे भी देना चाहूंगा जिन लोगों को मालूम नहीं है. जम्मू कश्मीर लिबरेशन फ्रंट का जो फाउंडर था मकबूल भट्ट, he himself was a cold-blooded murderer. मकबूल भट्ट ने अमरनाथ जी थे, शहीद अमरनाथ जी, नादिहल विलेज शाख, नादिहल विलेज में उनको he has himself killed him. उनको काफी लोग अमर नादिहल नाम से भी बुलाते थे. और उनके मर्डर के बाद मकबूल भट्ट के ही बंदों ने, जो जेकेएलएफ के बंदे थे, उन्होंने टंगमर के पास एक कछुआ गांव है कश्मीर में, तो वहां पे हकीम श्रीकंठ का कत्लेआम इन्हीं के जेकेएलएफ के टेररिस्टों ने किया. तो ये एक, अगर आप चाहें तो नोट कर लें, जेकेएलएफ जो आज खुद को एक गांधीयन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन या खुद को एक सेक्युलर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ऑफ कश्मीर प्रोजेक्ट कर रही है, और जो कश्मीरियत का ढोल बजाते हैं, कश्मीरियत का सबसे बड़ा प्रूफ, मतलब कश्मीरियत न होने का सबसे बड़ा प्रूफ है कि इस टाइम हम 11 लोग यहाँ पे बात कर रहे हैं, अपनी कहानियां सुना रहे हैं और दुनिया सुन रही है. I mean, coming back to the Taplu Saab's martyrdom, I think I don't need to tell you much because Arunji already, and we already saw the PPT and everything. But let us remember this thing, that the procession, the last rites, the procession unka nikla Taplu Saab ka. I mean, that was the last pro-India procession in Valley, in Kashmir Valley, of that magnitude. Over 2,000 Kashmiri Pandits joined that procession. So symbolically, this day is our Kashmiri Hindu Martyrs Day. और मैं पिछले 30 साल से 31 साल से पनून कश्मीर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, जो कि हर कश्मीरी पंडित जानता है, उसके साथ जुड़ा रहा. कैंप्स में हम लोगों ने काम किया, जो जम्मू में एक्टिविज्म था, दिल्ली में एक्टिविज्म था, यूथ फॉर पनून कश्मीर के बैनर के अंडर काम किया. और पनून कश्मीर ने, it was the first organization, and credit goes to Dr. Agnishekhar for including 14th September, जिसको हम बलिदान दिवस कहते हैं, कश्मीरी हिंदू बलिदान दिवस. इसको जो हमारा जो एल्मनैक है, our कश्मीरी नेटिव एल्मनैक, that we, जिसको हम कश्मीरी कहते हैं नेजपथर या जंथरी जिसको बोलते हैं. तो you can find there 14th September is mentioned there as Balidan Divas, Kashmiri Hindu Balidan Divas. And not only that, as an organization, Panun Kashmir, we also made sure that Holocaust Day, 19 January 1990, that we commemorate as Holocaust Day, is also introduced into the almanacs. And there was one more phenomena that I mean, obviously all of you know, but because this is 31st year of our exile from Kashmir, so हम बेसिकली 5000 साल से पुरानी तो हमारी हिस्ट्री है, जिसको हम सप्तऋषि संवत के हिसाब से बोलते हैं. I mean, as per the Christian calendar, we are in 2020, right? But as per our own, which we should be very proud of, like as per our own native Kashmiri calendar, we are in 5096. And then we just added one more thing to this. Post 1990, which is basically not our first exodus, it is our 7th exodus. Post 1990 till 2020, right? So already we are into the 31st year of exile. तो इस phenomena को हमने as Nirvasan Samvat, exile calendar, this we also got introduced into our almanacs, Janthari, Nejpathar, our native Kashmiri almanac, या पंचांग जिसको आप सिंपल हिंदी भाषा में कहते हैं. So this was our contribution as an organization, क्योंकि कश्मीरी पंडित, कश्मीरी हिंदू दुनिया के किसी भी कोने में हो, घर में जंतरी तो होती है, almanac तो होता ही है. So and I'm also reminded of, because my, as a family, in the beginning I told you, like as a family we faced 2 exoduses. My grandfather got in 1947 when there was Kabyle raid from Pakistan. So because I hailed from we as a family hailed from a very small village in Baramulla known as Sumbal village. We got displaced from Sumbal to Srinagar, and in 1947 that was the first exodus my family saw. And honestly telling you, I mean, I have no shame in it, but it was like even hard to make the ends meet, right? And then somehow, as my brother Dipit very well said, that that resistance, that resilience in our community, we again rose up. And then in 1990, again, as a family, I should say this was our second exodus, right? So I'm reminded because in Srinagar we used to live at Sathu Barbar Shah, and there was one cobbler, एक मोची था वहाँ पे, अशोक कुमार नाम से. I mean, he was not even spared. This is again, I'm making these names like public, today because I want to make sure जो ये false narratives कश्मीर से आ रहे हैं, false propagandas आ रहे हैं कि नहीं भाई आपका तो कोई genocide हुआ ही नहीं, ये तो migration थी, ये तो जगमोहन ने किया. So we have to smash this. This false narrative has to be smashed by not only Himalay Sumbli, but all the youngsters here. जैसे विद्या जी का जो सपूत इस टाइम हमारे साथ है, he is, I mean, I think the most youngest guy here. So I mean, people who are even younger to him should know these notions, like with these false narratives, propagandas that are being like generated from Valley, and they are propagating, and they are like, as you know, like there is a saying, repeat a lie 100 times till the time it becomes truth. Repeat a distortion, repeat a propaganda 100 times so that it becomes a truth. So this is how they how our enemy behaves. And let me tell you very spontaneously, I was reading an article yesterday. तो एक उसमें से मैंने एक छोटा सा वो quotation पढ़ी, बड़ी अच्छी quotation थी वो. So what happens, and I related that to our community and to our oppressor or our the community that made us, forced us into exile, Kashmiri Muslims. So imagine एक example देता हूँ आपके लिए, हो सकता है कि आपको ये काफी interesting लगे. A burglar, a guy breaks into your house, right? And he wants to steal something. In the process, he hurts himself. He starts bleeding, right? And you catch him. And he says, look, buddy, I got hurt too. I am bleeding myself. So I am a victim too. And I understand because I was here to rob you off. So you too are a victim. So I am a victim. I am a sufferer because in the process of stealing, I hurt myself. And you are a sufferer too. So we are brothers. So this is the narrative they give us to, right? Kashmiri Muslims tell us.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate, for giving us the insight about many sung and unsung heroes, which probably not many of us know. Thanks for your well-researched, thing. So time is short. We will move to other speakers. Thank you so much.
But Vidyaji, I would just like to brief, if you can give me only 2 or 3 minutes.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Sure. तो मैं अपनी बात को थोड़ी तेजी से रखता हूँ. हमें as Kashmiri Pandit youngsters throughout the world, we have to understand, we have to talk about solution, because हमने अपने victimhood की बात पिछले 30 साल में की है. Solution की बात करनी है. Solution क्या है? कश्मीरी पंडित जो ये हमारी situation है, इसका solution return and rehabilitation है. और return and rehabilitation मतलब मैं, अरविंद, दीपित, विद्या जी, अरुण जी, कल को हम लोग सारे वापस कश्मीर जाते हैं, शेखपुरा जाते हैं, वेसू जाते हैं, 8 बाय 8 के कमरे में बैठते हैं वहां पर. That is not my return and rehabilitation. I reject it because I am a stakeholder in Kashmir. I am an owner of Kashmir. I have more than 5,000 years of history, and you will not dictate, I mean, terms and conditions how I am going to return back. तो कश्मीर जब हम जाएंगे, 1991 में more than 1 lakh Kashmiri Hindus endorsed मार्गदर्शन रेजोल्यूशन. मार्गदर्शन रेजोल्यूशन 91, और उसके बाद एक हाउ होमलैंड, उसके बाद वाई होमलैंड, और अभी रिसेंटली एज एन ऑर्गेनाइजेशन हमने पनून कश्मीर एट्रोसिटीज और genocide and atrocities bill 2020 published की, that we have sent to Prime Minister of India, Home Minister of India, and we are hoping that it would be introduced in the Parliament of India, and our genocide would be addressed by government of India, rather than rubbing the salt on our wounds, making insult on, I mean, adding insult to our injury, calling us migrants, calling us just 215 killings, giving us just this brazen figure of 215 kills. So we are hoping, I mean, this is my appeal to my brothers throughout the world. कृपया करके मार्गदर्शन रेजोल्यूशन 1991 को भगवत गीता की तरह अपने गले से लगा लीजिए, और ये समझ लीजिए कि कश्मीर अगर आप जाओगे, आप किसी सूरत हाल में कश्मीर, जैसे दीपित कह रहा था, आई डोंट वांट टू गो बैक एज अ विजिटर, राइट? तो अगर कश्मीर वापस जाना है तो वी नीड टू हैव अ जियो स्ट्रेटेजिक फुट होल्ड. तो जियो स्ट्रेटेजिक फुट, और एक और छोटी सी बात कहना चाहूंगा, हम लोग एथनिक क्लींजिंग वर्ड काफी यूज करते हैं कि एथनिक क्लींजिंग हुई हमारे साथ. एथनिक, it was not ethnic cleansing, my friends. It was religio-ethnic cleansing, because ethnic cleansing is just because tomorrow Muslims will come, yeah, we also got killed, so it was our ethnic cleansing. No, we as an identity were targeted, right? So religio-ethnic cleansing happened, and we should understand. और अब 30 साल हो चुके हैं, बहुत टाइम हो चुका है, वितस्ता से काफी पानी बह चुका है, और 30 साल के बाद जब हमें सोल्यूशन की बात करनी है, थ्रू आउट द वर्ल्ड एक वॉइस होगी, एक बैनर होगा फॉर कश्मीर, और वी विल पुट, हम अपनी शर्तों पे जाएंगे. वी वांट अ यूनियन टेरिटरी इन कश्मीर. कोएग्जिस्टेंस has been rejected by majority community of valley, and let me make this point very clear to all of you youngsters, there is no other, absolutely no other solution than that. Thank you, Vidyaji, and sorry about that.
Alaji, thank you so much for that very detail oriented, like, you know, of course it comes from, you know, your great dad, who's been basically a lone fighter along with, you know, some stalwarts of the community. Now I quickly move on to Neha. Neha, you know, we have interacted here in Canada, and despite the fact that you have, let's see, compared to like many others on the panel, your link to Kashmir is through your dad. You were born and brought up in Mauritius, but you know what attracted me towards you in the fact is that you have full knowledge about our rituals and customs. I mean, you do fastings and you celebrate Shivratri. I mean, what is it, you know, that attracts you towards Kashmir, despite the fact that your connect to Kashmir is very remote?
Thank you so much, Uncle. To begin with, I'll say thank you so much for including me. And I would want to like start maybe by telling a bit about my Dadaji or about my parents back in Kashmir. So my Dadaji actually retired back in 1984, before all this happened. And he retired as an assistant director in Jammu Kashmir Educational the department. So then and my father and my mom, they moved back to Mauritius in 1985. So again, before all the trouble actually started. And I was born in 1989, and my mom clearly, every time, my mom being a non-Kashmiri, she reminds me every time that when I was born, I was a baby in an arm, but they kept waiting for phone call from my family in India, in Srinagar, saying, okay, we're moving, or we've reached Jammu nicely, everything's fine. They moved around September, I think, or August, September 89, they moved finally to Jammu. For me, what really, I don't know how I feel really connected. I think it's from all these stories I've heard from my Dadaji before he passed away in 2000, or even my dad, and I have two chachas. I have one chacha, he's very much involved in everything related to Kashmir, all the fast, all the cultures, everything. He's very much into that. I think from him, I learned it, and my dad, seeing my parents growing up. When it comes to all, I'll talk about everything what I know. When it comes to my mom, I learned Kashmir cooking from her, and she learned it from my daddy G, asking her over the phone. And then when I moved to Canada in 2011, though I was in Montreal, but I connected to KOAC in Toronto. I remember clearly, and I don't know if it was you, Uncle, but someone had messaged me, telling me, please attend my events. I'm like, but I'm actually in Montreal. And I made sure when I moved to Toronto, the first person I actually connected was Vidya Uncle. And then he started including me in everything. Though over here, like I say, I'm only connected with my dad. When there's Thal Baran, I'll do the Thal Baran. When there's Ashtami, I do everything. I think I have a proud feeling when I say that I am actually a Kashmiri Pandit because of my dad. And I really think that it's my family who's all the stories I've heard. Whenever I go to India, my chachis, they always talk to me in Kashmiri all the time for me to understand. So I do understand Kashmiri, but I can't talk much. And that's only thanks to them. And one more thing is, I really want to say, like all the other, I would say, brothers, sisters, the brothers I've talked, one thing is that I really want to visit Kashmir, not as a tourist. I want to go there as if that's my motherland. That's why I want to go there. I've had chances in the past because my chacha, he worked for a government. So whenever he was posted in Srinagar, he would say, come, because he had all the security with him. He had a government house to stay with and all. But that's not how I want to go to Kashmir, always in a fear, ki kal kuch ho jaye or something like that. I want to be able to visit Kashmir, Srinagar. And unfortunately, all I can see now will be where my parents used to live, because the houses, everything has got burnt, or everything got burnt by terrorists. So all I'll be able to see is where everything was. right now, when they tell me stories, when they read me, I can only picture, okay, aisa tha. My dad would tell me they used to live in a house with 3-4 stories, and then everyone would talk from different stories, or even the neighbors. But I want to really be able to go and see where all my dad grew. He would tell me stories. When going to school, he would always compare winter of Kashmir and winter of Canada, saying that winter of Canada is nothing comparing to what it was in Kashmir. Every day they have selected people who had to go and get students who had to go and get wood logs, would get to come and start warming, or wearing thick clothes. So I really want to be able to go back and see Kashmir.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you so much for that, emotional connect with Kashmir. That's really great. You know, I want to tell all the youngsters that, we are doing very well, economically. We have created, a niche for ourselves globally. But what we have lost is the connect to Kashmir. We have lost our roots. We have lost our language. And I believe like everything is related to our roots, who we are, where we come from. I mean, if you look globally, everybody is concerned about their DNAs and their backgrounds and all. So our background is there. We belong to that great land called Kashmir, and we are not able to go there. So the next in the speaker panel is Pankaj Rana. Pankaj, please unmute yourself. Pankaj comes from Ranawari. His dad comes from Ranawari. Rana Saab is my guru. I mean, a great person, and we are looking forward to, seeing soon in Canada. So, Pankaj, the dice is all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Vidyaji, for including me as a panelist on today's discussion. First, paying tribute to all the sacrifices that people have done, and especially to Sri Tapluji for his martyrdom. One point I want to highlight about sacrifices is that what that gets lost is that today in 2020 we're talking about mental health a lot. And it's a global discussion due to the pandemic as well. The sacrifice that our elder generation, my grandparents, when they left Kashmir, there was a linguistic barrier that they had to face in coming to Delhi or various parts of India when they moved from that place. Those sacrifices are kind of unsung sacrifices. We need to note them as well in the martyrdom that we are talking about today. So and those were grave times. Those people have faced mental challenges like anybody. I think 95% of that generation was in a mental depression till they kind of passed away. But that's what we need to note on this day as well. Talking about some of the memories back home, I was 6 years old when we did the migration from Kashmir to Delhi. As I talked about in my introduction, is that we left Kashmir a little later than January. My dad was a teacher in Presentation Convent for some time, in 2 years time, from 84 or 85, and then he was also now working in a government organization there. So he was notedly in Ranawari known as Panditji. The one who teaches you, that Pandit, right? So Panditji. So his chitti came in April. There was a letter that was thrown to our place through stones, and then it was his name was next. That unka in the mosque, his name was on the next hit list to be carried out an assassination or something like that. So we had to leave April 19, 1990. From Kashmir. It was midnight. We just were 5 people, my dadi and we 4, my elder sister and myself, my mom and my dad. And we were just having one trunk of, clothes and stuff, and we just left. I was just 6 years old. But as a 6-year-old, I can now relate. My son is 4 years old. I can now relate to how my memories were at that time. So I used to know all the songs that these, Kashmiri Muslims were chanting those days for, driving us away from whatever was happening, and to kind of outcast us from the Kashmir Valley. So as a 6-year-old, when we sat in the bus that was going from Srinagar to Jammu, in that bus, the driver was a Muslim. And he was driving very rash. He was driving the bus very rash. I remember my mom telling me afterwards that you were the one, I was the one, the 6-year-old, was the one who was keeping the driver sane by chanting all those slogans that I had remembered from, you know, the crowds gatherings or whatever was happening outside. Hum kya chahte hain, azadi, azadi ka matlab kya, and you know, all those. And I had them by heart at that time. Because I was a 6-year-old, I did not know what they meant really. But because of those slogans or those chantings, that Muslim driver was, you know, happy, and then he happily drove us to the Jammu station. And I remember this really vividly, that everybody from that bus got down and they blessed me that you saved us today from this bus driver, because he would have done anything at night, because this was a night ride from you know, Srinagar to Jammu. And that's one of the memories that I have from that, you know, exodus and that you know, day. Coming back to what you know, my brothers here have raised on the, you know, Kashmiriyat and, you know, other things that we are talking about, I have very strong points on you know, the comparison of Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust, to the Kashmiri Holocaust of 1990. We can go on and on about, you know, how one particular religious community was targeted, and you know, that's the comparison that we draw. Interestingly, I was reading an article or a book from the Holocaust about a lady who was, you know, telling her tales in 1990 from the Holocaust. She was part of the Mengele twins experiment, the angel of death. You know, the guy who was, you know, doing all sorts of experiments on the twins. And she was saying that in her interview to some Boston newspaper, she was telling that she actually met the guy who was outstationed outside the gas chamber, and they actually made him sign the declaration in Auschwitz, going to that location, and made them sign that declaration that yes, the Holocaust happened. Yes, there were people taken into those gas chambers, and you know, then, you know, did whatever in that gas chamber, and then he was witness to that. Why this was important, and she was saying, is that there were a lot of narratives, as Himalaya was also pointing out. There were also a lot of narratives in Jewish Holocaust, that a lot of Germans and a lot of Western media was of the opinion that it never happened, because there was no, you know, proof from history. Why that was important from that lady's perspective is that she was like, now I want to shove that piece of paper in the faces of all those people who say that Holocaust never happened. So similarly, drawing a comparison to this, is that we need certain kind of declaration from anybody, from the state government or from the Kashmiri Muslim community. At least this is the least that you know, for a dialogue or for us to go back there has to happen, that anybody from the, you know, leading state governments or machineries or any Muslim leader, they have to come forward and say, yes, it happened. Right now, the narrative is set as that, you know, this never happened, or it was Jagmohan, or there are different narratives that Himalayas kind of elaborated on them. So that's what my 2 cents are here for that, is that Kashmiriyat, I don't know, exists or not, but Kashmiriyat can only exist when somebody from the opposite community or the state leadership or the federal leadership in our country comes forward and says, yes, the genocide did happen to Kashmiri Pandits, and now we want to repair that, and then talk about the dialogue from there on. So that's what I think about the solution. My dad is also a noted singer in you know, in our Kashmiri community. His name is S.K. Rana. So he goes into different events, and you know, he talks about the solutions that we should be going, and you know, talks about the harmony. A lot of music is driven from you know, all those you know, Sufi singings, and we are culturally kind of really collaborated in that sense. So once we have that dialogue, we can have that Kashmiriyat, I guess, someday. And then once we get that feeling of being safe and going back on our own terms, then I think we can live harmoniously with everybody else there. That's what my thought process is.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you so much. Like, you know, Ranawari people are very special, you know, to all the Kashmir, because they were the most Jujaru Kashmiri Pandits. Ganpati Ranawari. Next on the panel is Puneet Pandita. Puneet, can you unmute yourself? Go ahead.
Namaskar, everyone, once again. And first of all, my Shraddhanjali to our greatest martyr, Shri Tikalal Tapluji. And first of all, I would like to, you know, be very thankful and grateful to my ancestors who stood against all odds in last 6-7 centuries and kept our culture and religious ethos. Not only they kept it, they passed on to all of us. So I'm very thankful to them as well. And um, as I mentioned earlier as well, I'm originally from a village near a picnic spot called Kokonok in South Kashmir district, Anantnag. And we were around 3-4 families in our village, surrounded by around 300 to 400 families of the majority community. My story is no different, but what I remember when I was just 4 or 5 years old, and what I heard from my grandparents and parents is that 89-90 was just a time when curtain got lifted. It had started not just in 89-90. We have been through these exoduses in all these 5-6 centuries, and what my parents remember is the way they were humiliated everywhere, whether it was while they were following their religious practices, while they were following their cultural practices. They were humiliated. They were called by names and whatnot. But we still thought better times would come, and we never retaliated. Having said that, we were a minuscule minority, around 3% of the population. uh, I also remember from my grandparent, my grandpa. I was very close to him. He used to tell me stories when we shifted to Jammu. He used to tell me that there were 5 to 6 times in a year when we had to bear the brunt of stone pelting because of somebody. India has won a match against Pakistan, events like that. India has done something fabulous. Okay, stone pelt Hindu families. And apart from that, there were times when they tried to burn our houses. It's well before 89-90, and I hear from my grandparents that they then decided that my younger brother of my grandpa and my dad would do shifts to safeguard our family. Every night they used to be awake. I mean, they used to be awake to ensure that everyone is safe and no one is coming to burn our houses or stone pelt our houses. And this was done by the same people who were taught by my dad. They all used to give him so much respect in the daytime. He was locally known as Master G. He was the only Master G in the whole village. And they would, and it was done by the same people who were employed by my grandpa. My grandpa was a great farmland owner. And in the day they were like this, and in the night they used to change the colors because nobody could identify them in the nights. And I also remember one thing when I was a small kid around 3 to 4 years old. My dad used to take me in his lap around 1 kilometer far from our home to watch a television program called I believe it was Ramayana or Mahabharat, because that family had a battery run TV. In our family, in our village, in the whole area, electricity was shut when Mahabharata and Ramayana was played. These were all big and small things which these guys used to do with us. And I'm in the majority community. And then came 14th September 1989, when our tallest leader was martyred by these people, and followed by threats, followed by killing so many of our leaders, and raping our daughters, mothers, and um, then giving us open threats, pasting chits at our homes, and playing music all around the night for us to leave. We still stood strong. We thought things would improve, but then came a slogan which was very horrifying: "We will kill your man and we will take your woman." That was the slogan which uh, I believe that was a slogan which turned the story around. And every Pandit family, every Hindu family thought that we should leave because we are not in a position to fight. We were just 3% population, and we have to safeguard our women. And that's when we left. And I'm the youngest in the family. I have 3 elder sisters. My mother, my 3 elder sisters. We ran. In the first week of January. I don't remember the date. In 1990, we were not able to get. There was so much influx of people going towards the plains, that we could not get um, a complete truck for our family. So we left with some other families. And I remember that ride. It was horrific. But we are very thankful to some of the Sikh brothers who came forward with their trucks to help us leave that um, place at that time. And and that's it from and then from there on my parents came in, and my dad and grandparents came in after a month, and rest is history. uh, at some point of time, yeah, I visited once. I visited once to the valley. Nothing much has changed. Their mindsets are completely poisoned. It's very difficult to mingle again with them. They may be very nice people individually, but when it comes to a group, you cannot stay with them. Let me be blunt about it. You cannot stay with them. Their ideology is completely poisoned, whether it is because of the misrule of the governments, the successive governments, and who gave them chances to build these Hurriyats and JKLFs and all. But they are completely poisoned. You cannot stay with them. But as a Kashmiri Hindu, I would like to have a home back home, like other Kashmiri majority community youngsters who are working elsewhere in India and elsewhere in world. They have a home back in Kashmir. I also want a home back in Kashmir. Whether I visit or not, that's my personal choice. But I want to go there on my personal terms and not somebody dictating me any terms from the majority community. And that's it from my end. I wish someday we would get our homeland and some on our own terms, and we all return home with dignity.
Definitely,
Jai Hind,
Puneet.
Jai Bharat, Jai Kashmir.
Jai Kashmir. Definitely, Puneet. Very thoughtful, and your thought process is very clear. That we can't basically trust the same forces who were responsible for our 7 exoduses. And we are seeing how they are treating the minorities in other parts of the world, which are closely bordered with India. Afghanistan has no minority left. Pakistan minorities are depleting with every passing day. Bangladesh, and we can basically see that how they treat their minorities. Either they convert them, or they kill them, or they let them flee. So that's exactly the modus operandi which they followed in Kashmir. Really. Okay, so next.
And Vidaji, I have one more point. I just forgot that the same people, the same pseudo-seculars who coined the term Kashmiria, the same pseudo-seculars gave this exodus a name of, Kashmiri Pandits. I must tell you, it was not only the Kashmiri Pandits who got uh, who got the brunt of this heat. It was all the Hindus who got burnt off this heat in the J&K, whether it was the people from Kishtwar. Yeah, exactly. Whether it was Rajputs of Badarwa, Rajouri, Punch, whether it was other Hindu castes of different districts, everyone faced it. They made it a Kashmiri Pandit. Yeah, exactly. Some sane Muslims as well. But they made it a Kashmiri Pandit headline, just to ensure that Hindus do not get united and fight for their cause, fight for their brothers in J&K.
Thank you, Puneet. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank
the
you.
next on the panel is Seema Rajput Pandita. Seema is a daughter-in-law of Kashmir, and I'm so glad, that she is on the panel here. Seema is very passionate about Kashmir, and she has worked as an army major. She is an AFMC Pune graduate, and she comes from the medical line. And Seema was on the job in Kashmir for many years, and she has seen both sides of the society. She has seen atrocities happening after the bomb blast, and she has seen mangled bodies. Seema, the dice is all yours. Share your thoughts. What do you think about, particularly when you were in Kashmir?
Thank you so much, Vidyaji. So as my introduction is already done.
Unmute.
Hello? Yeah, we can hear,
is it audible?
Yeah,
okay. Okay. So myself, Major Seema Rajput, retired now, Seema Pandita. I served 10 years in Indian Army. And I was my last posting was Badami Bagh Cantonment. I stayed there for almost 3 years, staying with the locals and although my relation with Kashmir began in September 2012, when I started my tenure in the 92 base hospital as nursing officer, now it is more deeper as I got married in a Kashmiri Pandit boy here in Canada. I was aware about the Kashmiri Pandit exodus from the valley from my childhood. Now, I'm able to understand the reality of this biggest tragedy in the Indian subcontinent, the real events that led to the exodus. You can say the horrible brutality towards the Pandits by their own so-called Kashmiri Muslim brother, who they shared a deep history and culture with them. The chain of events leading up to the night of Jan 1990, and as my husband told me, the night of the 7th Exodus, and the extremely difficult life after migration, and how the term Kashmiri Pandits became merely a part of political speeches as we hear in mainstream India. After understanding the reality about what happened in Kashmir in the 90s, I was crystal clear in my head that the term Kashmiriyat is parroted by the pseudo-liberal and pseudo-secular media, and polity of India was merely to provide a facet of secular, you can say the tolerant, cultured, peaceful, and educated outlook of the Kashmiri Muslims. That is for their own reasons. There is nothing called Kashmiriyat. Pandits saw the true face of intolerant and radical Islam for centuries before rest of India or the world saw it, and I also saw when I stayed there with the locals. And what happened in 1990 was a final push to the kafir in order to ring in the true Islamic order. And what happened in Kashmir is just a part of global jihadi.
You unmuted yourself.
What is the worst part of the Kashmiri Pandit tragedy in 90s is that for the first time after Indian independence, Kashmiri Pandits found themselves abandoned to their fate, stranded in their own homes, encircled by rampant mobs. The Indian establishment was caught napping, and its agencies in the state, particularly the army and the paramilitary forces, did not consider it necessary to intervene. I don't know what's the reason behind that, the political reason, or I have no idea. But the pleadings for help were incessant, but not a soldier came to their rescue. That's the biggest dilemma. Therefore, Kashmiri Pandits found best protection in huddling together indoors, frozen with fear. You can say the praying for the night to pass. I can say, what a shame for the free Indian democracy, which failed to prevent this genocide. What a shame for the people of India. And more than that, why did nobody in India learn anything from this even after 70 years of independence? Today, if you consider, if you go all around the India, there are Kashmiris in every nook, corner of India. After all, we Hindus are a tolerant human race, but for how long? Will our tolerance cost us our existence? I don't think so. Like, how? Okay, now I would like to share my personal experience in Kashmir with the locals, what they think about us, about the Kashmiri Pandits, about the about the India. So I was living in the Army nursing officers mess during my tenure, and we had all about 10 to 12 local servants. One fine day, I was in charge of the mess. I was in the area, and one of them, the young fellow, he was almost 25 years old, or between 25 26. He asked me, "Aap India se aaye ho? India mein kahan par ho?" And I told him, I'm from Delhi. Next sentence, he just asked me, मुझे भी दिल्ली जाना है एक दिन, मेरा मन भी जाने का करता है. So I told him, then you can go. Why you have to afraid to go? What he said in the second stand, पता नहीं इंडिया वाले मुझे आने देंगे क्या? And I said, what does it mean? I didn't get what he wants to say. So I asked him why he's saying this. You can go whenever you want. Why people have to say anything for you? आप भी इंडिया में आते हो? Straightforwardly, what he said to me, नहीं नहीं, हम तो कश्मीरी हैं. ये हमारा वतन है और आप दूसरे वतन से आए हो. So you know what is there in this mentality? Like we Indians are from separate country and they consider their country a Kashmiri. A Kashmir is the country for themselves, and this statement I heard from all of them, from everyone. They consider India. They don't consider India as their country. They consider Kashmiri, and but not Indians. So I asked to another servant who was a college student in Kashmir and used to work in a government, like I asked him, okay, who told you all these things, like you are not Indian and it's only Kashmir. So what he said, मौलवी साहब हमको पढ़ाते हैं बचपन से ही कि हमारा वतन कश्मीर है और हम आज़ादी के लिए लड़ रहे हैं. ये तो यहाँ जो आर्मी है वो इंडिया की है और वो यहाँ पर इंडियंस को भेजती है हम सबको अपना गुलाम बनाने के लिए, बट हमें लड़ना है हमारी आज़ादी के लिए. दिस इज व्हाट मौलवी साहब जो वहां पर है वो पढ़ाते ये सब बच्चों को. आई डोंट अंडरस्टैंड कि ये होता क्यों है. But I asked him then why you guys are working here in army in cantonment? You should have not. अगर ऐसी सोच है आपकी. तो he said नहीं, मुझे ऐसा नहीं लगता है क्योंकि मेरी दादी ने मुझे बोला है कि ये सब झूठ है, ये कुछ नहीं है और यहाँ काम करने के लिए कुछ भी नहीं है, हमें पैसा चाहिए, मुझे आगे पढ़ना है इसलिए मैं यहाँ काम करता हूँ. Then suddenly he added a line, मुझे पत्थर मारना अच्छा नहीं लगता. ये लोग 300 रुपए देते हैं पत्थर मारने के लिए. Then I asked, कौन लोग देता है ये पत्थर मारने के लिए? He asked, ये लोग जो पाकिस्तान से आते हैं और हमको पैसा देते हैं पत्थर मारने के लिए 300 रुपया. इसलिए यहाँ पे जो लड़के हैं वो काम नहीं करना चाहते, वो बस पत्थर मार के पैसा लेना चाहते हैं और हमें आजादी दिलाने के लिए मोटिवेट करते हैं. This is the true picture behind the scenario. Also, in my point of view also, like there is no factory in Kashmir, there is no industrial area where people, they get a job, like the youngsters. So they agree to do the stone pelting over the army personnel to earn some money for their daily use. And they think that Pakistan is helping them to get independence from India. This is what a conversation I had with my servants, because they stay there. So again, I have something to tell about the Article 370 also. The Article 370 gave a special status to Jammu and Kashmir, which was administered from 1954 to 31st October 2019, as all we know that it's now removed. During this period, people of Kashmir psychologically felt that they were from a separate nation and therefore they behaved rudely with the army people. Many incidents of stone pelting took place. Everybody knows that. It's well aware when army personnel went in civil area for search operations. Before, as far as I know, we are not supposed to interrogate with the local people, like जिसके ऊपर हमें शक है, like they are from the terrorist area or something. We are not supposed to question them because of this Article 370. And but I guess after the removal, abrogate Article 370 of the Constitution that provides for special status. This is a bold and logical move towards the national integration. The removal of this Article 370 will definitely change the attitude of Kashmiri people, basically the Kashmiri Muslims, who think they are not a part of India. So now they come to know, like, of course, they are Indians. This is very well India. So and so now if you ask me, the stone pelting situations are very low now. Like you can say there is no stone pelting now after this removal of this 370 article. And psychologically, there is a change in common man of Kashmiri Muslims that they have, like now they very well understand they are from state which is integral part of India. Now, instance of the army personnel also, they have the motivation towards the service. Now they can feel free. They have the idea that, okay, now they can control the crime, they can control the terrorism. And if you ask me, in my point of view, is if Islamic terror is defeated in Kashmir, it will be defeated across the world. So, and I have a few more experience, like during the flood. It happened in September 2014. I was very well posted there, and few people did not want the harmony between the locals and the army, so they used to throw all our army men into the water. वो कहाँ बह के जा रहे हैं हमें नहीं पता. Like, we were giving the medication, we are helping them, rescuing them. I know I worked 24/7 for 7 to 14 days in rescuing them and giving the hospitalization, giving the treatments, khana. हमने हमारा जो बादामी बाग cantonment है, it's in the height, like in the mountain, our hospital. So we rescued 20-40,000 people in that area. We used to cook ourselves उनको खिलाने के लिए. And then after all, they don't have humanity at all. I mean, this is my experience. So in conclusion, if you ask me, as a youth, I want there should be a bulk movement towards the Kashmir. Bulk movement means we Hindus. The Hindus should go there, and there should be a stabilization of the industrial area. So people over there can go and move, and then they can stay there. And abrogation of Article 370 is a historical step for this, which will connect Jammu and Kashmir with the rest of the country. And the decision has adversely affected the plans of Western neighbor and its proxies also. If you talk about the China and all, the borders, they are doing the havoc there. So, and now we have a zero tolerance against the terrorism. So these are my experience. Thank you so much, Vidyaji, for considering me to speak up here in this beautiful event that I'm very lucky having here and speaking about this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you on the panel here. And you were speaking basically from really what we call the ground zero. You have seen them interacting. And, you know, as everybody said, Himalaya said the same thing, Pankaj said the same thing, that we cannot trust them anymore. We have trusted them enough. 7 times we forgive and forget. But now the time has come to call a spade a spade. We need a separate homeland for ourselves. We can't remain in those ghettos again and become sitting ducks for them to come and kill us again. So we need our separate homeland under a union territory status. And we will soon go back to Kashmir after Article 370 has been abrogated. And now the door is wide open, and we thank our tall screen leadership of Narendra Modi ji and Amit Shah for that. Now the next on the panel is Shivans Dar. Shivans, unmute yourself. You are, the youngest in the panel here. You have never been to Kashmir. Unfortunately, I could never take you back because I was waiting for the times to come. And we will go back to Kashmir not as visitors, but on our own terms. Shivans, the dice is all yours.
Thank you. So, my perspective on the matter and the experiences that are shared by my family, my parents, are very similar to the ones that other people have experienced. Like during the exodus of 1990, they faced abject uncertainty, humiliation for leaving their homes and their identities, and a total loss of their cultural backgrounds and histories. And they really had to rebuild themselves from absolutely nothing. The only thing they really had was a strong sense of will and the cultural values that they brought from their past. And at home, my parents are still very strongly connected to their past, mostly through language. Like they all speak Kashmiri at home. Although I don't really speak that well, I can still speak it. I completely understand it. Same with my sister. And we follow all the traditions at home, like Pan, Garbat. We celebrate kosher vods, and they're very vocal about what they believe happened there and share their perspectives with everyone, and they care deeply about it. But how I feel as a young person is very different from how people and the panel feel, and even how my parents feel. So as a young person, I've been mostly insulated from the pain and the hurt that they've experienced, because like now I'm one generation disconnected from that. And the only way I can feel is through empathizing with them, which is not exactly the same. So the connect with the history and the culture just isn't as strong. Although I'm grateful for my ancestors and the community for their resilience, it's a tough position for anyone to be in, and they went through it with grace and are now successful and are all over the world, uh, continuing to live and continuing to prosper. And I feel like the emphasis on education that they had allowed them to persevere and succeed globally. I'm mostly connected to Kashmir and Kashmiri history through the food more than anything. I enjoy cooking it, I enjoy eating it, and I, like a lot of other Kashmiri people, think their mom is the best cook that there is. And I also really appreciate that I can meet Kashmiris anywhere in the world and can immediately connect. I've lived in many countries. I've lived in the Gulf, like Saudi Arabia, UAE. I've lived in North America, Canada, the United States. I've also lived in the Netherlands and Europe, and everywhere I go, I can meet some Kashmiri. And there's somewhere there who's very hospitable, who I can connect with immediately. And there's people everywhere that I can meet. But all that said, I feel largely disconnected from my cultural identity and even my religion. I feel like I've thought about it a lot, and I don't know if there are many elements of it that can really add value in my current context. I feel like maybe that's because of my youth, that's because of my current situation. Like even my parents haven't really been able to convince me. I feel like maybe as I age, want to connect to my past and my history more. But currently, there isn't much that's keeping me connected to the past. And I would love to be convinced by someone and welcome ideas to change my perspective. I think that there is probably value in connecting to my history and my past, but I just don't see it. And I feel like a lot of other people in my situation and my age probably feel the same way. And it's probably not just like me as a Kashmiri, like my friends from other cultural backgrounds and identities also feel like this. I feel like the world is moving towards a more connected global like mosaic where people roughly sort of keep their identities, but they're moving towards a completely new direction. So as unfortunate as it is, I feel like largely, other than the food, I'm pretty disconnected from my cultural identity.
Thank you, Shwansh. What I tell the current generation, my generation, Arunji's, my generation is the same. We were basically followers. We never questioned our parents, our grandparents. We just followed them. Probably it was the times when the knowledge was not that much readily available to us. While as current generation, I call them seekers. They are seek truth. They ask questions, and we as parents are trying our best to basically answer their questions. And they ask so many questions, and religions are basically a rigmarole of so many stories and sub stories and anecdotes. So sometimes it's very difficult for them to give them a correct perspective. So I hope Shivansh will basically we will visit Kashmir and see the profoundness of our culture in the past, and I'm sure time will be the great healer, and we will all basically go back to Kashmir, and we'll find a connect. The last one on the panel is Vabo Paul. Vabo, please unmute yourself, switch on your camera, and we are here to listen to you. Vabo, are you there?
Yeah, namaskar, Sarni. Thank you, Vidyaji, for giving me this opportunity to speak today. I was born post-Exodus in Delhi, but just because I was born post-Exodus and did not witness the 1990 Exodus does not mean that I'm not aware about the pain my family and the community went through. I have felt it and observed the deep anguish expressed by my parents, grandparents, and other family members every time they talk about Kashmir. Undoubtedly, we may be anywhere in the world or born any time before or after Exodus. Our roots shall always remain in Kashmir. Uh, Unfortunately, most of the people in world, including Indians, are unaware about the heinous crimes Kashmiri Hindus face for decades. Past 3 decades, which has peaked in the past 3 decades, and in the 80s with the brutal killings of Kashmiri Pandits, which included prominent personalities like Shri Tikalal Thapluji. And these horrific events and ultimately led to the exodus in 1990. Bringing in a little historic perspective, very few are aware that the exodus in 1990 was the seventh one faced by the Kashmiri Hindus in the valley. And it is a recorded fact that only 11 Hindu families were left in Kashmir towards the end of 14th century AD during the reign of Sultan Sikandar, who was also called Butchikan, which means the destroyer of idols. And it was during his reign that famous Sun Temple at Martand was destroyed. This period of religious persecution of the original inhabitants of the valley started with the arrival of Islam in Kashmir in early 14th century and continued for centuries thereafter. Refreshing some of our golden legacy and cultural heritage, Kashmir was very well known as a seat of highest learning, or Sharda Peeth, which predated even the great centers of learning like Nalanda and Takshala. Kashmir has been home to some of the highest schools of philosophy linked with Shaivism and Buddhism. Several towering personalities like Rupa Bhavani, Utpal Dev Ji, Lal Ded, Abhinav Gupta Ji, and many more hailed from Kashmir. And like Himalaya Bhaiya also said, that not many of us know that we have maintained our calendars, Nishpatar, for more than 5,000 years, and current year being called Saptarishi Samvat, which is the 596th year in our calendar. Coming back to present, using the term migrant, which has somehow gotten attached with the ways Pandits left the valley in 1990, is grossly incorrect. Migrant means we moved out of the valley voluntarily, which was definitely not the fact, and definitely not a voluntary move. Calling ourselves refugees, on the other hand, means that we would have crossed international boundaries, which in turn means we accept Kashmir as a separate nation, which it is not. It is an integral part of India, and it will always be an integral part of India. Therefore, calling ourselves refugees or migrants actually dilutes the sacrifices of our elders and the community leaders. We are internally displaced people who were once again victims of religious ethnic cleansing, and unfortunately this time in a secular India in 1990. This is a grave human rights violation of our community, and it still hasn't gotten the attention which it deserves. This error in the history of Kashmir needs to be corrected urgently to avoid any facts being distorted and misrepresented. Concluding, I would say, in my opinion, the best way to honor our martyrs is to preserve our culture, our language, our traditions and values to the best of our abilities. We should come together, get our voices heard, stop allowing ourselves to be called migrants, and petition Government of India to recognize the 1990 religious ethnic cleansing and genocide of Kashmiri Hindus for the atrocious crime it really was. Thank you, and Orzu.
Thank you, Vaibhav. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all your feelings and your well thought of historical perspective. Thank you all the panelists. Thank you, Arunji. I would like to sincerely thank the Chekala Temple Foundation, Kashmiri Pandits Australia, Ash Ranaji, who was responsible for creating all this, the technical buzz around this, and he has been responsible for many other such meetings around the world. I'd like to thank Pan Kashmir. I'd like to thank all the volunteers who came forward on a Sunday morning to share their thoughts. And I have one request to all the young people here who are today on this panel, that the world is basically today a world of narratives. As someone said, that when a lie is repeated 1,000 times, it becomes a truth. We are fighting a gargantuan scale of a narrative which basically tries to negate everything. Like, there are forces which basically talk about that Holocaust never happened. Same thing has happened. We have been whitewashed. Our history has been whitewashed all these years, and Kashmir is not an exception. I'd like to share with you that we come from a profound land, what we call the cradle of the Kashmir, the Indian civilization is Kashmir. Half the Vedic work was done in Kashmir. The Panini's grammar to Yoga Sutras, to Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. I can't even tell you how much proud I am as a Kashmiri Pandit, what Kashmiri Pandits have basically contributed to the Hindu ethos. and the world over, from Nati Shastra, which is considered to be the fifth Veda, it came from Kashmir. Abhinavgupta's treatise came, which is taught in 83 universities in the world, and unfortunately, not a single university in India is teaching Abhinavgupta. So, with this, I'd like to conclude today's meeting. Thank you so much. And we all will pray and determine ourselves, and we take an oath today that soon we will go to Kashmir on our own terms, not as a visitor, but as a native of Kashmir, the original aborigine of Kashmir. Thank you so much. Jai Ma Bhavani, Jai Bharat Mata ki Jai, Jai Moish Kashmir. Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much.